I'll just say, well, hey, Todd, how are you doing? And,
All right.
and we'll roll from there. Well, hey, Todd, how are you doing?
Man, I'm great. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be
I'm,
here. Thanks for
okay,
inviting me.
I'm just super excited to have you on. I've been interested because these little feeders just kept popping up about the Army of Orange, and it just really piqued my interest, and I wanted to know more about it. And then as I started to learn what little bit I was figuring out, there's more layers to this onion. You're into a lot of other different things too, and it just got me excited. But before I get ahead of myself, Todd, could you just tell us maybe a little about yourself and how you got into hunting?
Well, my name's Todd, and I grew up in the big city of Tick Bight, North Carolina. Now, if you don't know where Tick Bight is, that's near Bug Tussle, Skeeter Pond, Dog Patch, Pitch Kettle. It's right in the middle of eastern North Carolina. I tell people these names, and they look at me like I got something growing out of my nose or something, like I'm crazy. But they're real names, and it's near East Carolina University. So I tell people that, and they realize where we are. But I was born into hunting. My dad was a hunter. My older brother, who's 15 years older than me, was a hunter. My whole family hunts. As a matter of fact, we hunt the same property in Onslow County. We've hunted. My dad hunted it. Um, we're still hunting it now. We've officially managed it since 1971 or something like that, when the club was formed. And we have some strict rules on what you can shoot, what you can't shoot. But I was born into hunting. I was cursed with it, I guess. It's kept me out of trouble.
Well, what kind of hunting? You're born into it, but what all kinds of different hunting are you into?
In my you asked me about me also. So I've served in the military. I was actually a military intelligence agent. For the people that are going to be watching on my video, right above my shoulder here is my certificate showing that I was part of the Military Intelligence Corps. But I used to be Bond, and now I'm Q. So I used to be the military intelligence guy, out there being James Bond, which is nothing like it was in the movies. And now I tinker with electronics, so now I'm Q. But what do I hunt? I've hunted everything from small game to people. The military job I had was looking for terrorists on a global scale. You don't get much more intense than that. But primarily, I hunt white-tailed deer with hounds. We also bear hunt, and we rabbit hunt, small game hunt, but we primarily hunt deer. And my whole family is involved in it. I have several first cousins that we're the elders of the hunting club now. So we try and set a good example for the younger ones. I'm going to let you ask me another question or get me back on topic, whichever way you want to do it.
No, this is all good information. I just thinking about hunting with. So you like to hunt with dogs? I mean, so whitetail, bear, rabbit, small game. You're doing everything you do with dogs.
Yes and no. I actually own a fairly nice bow. I have a climbing stand, and I have no problem with climbing a tree or sitting at the base of a tree or getting in a blind and hunting that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
I've only taken one deer so far this year, and I took it still hunting. Mm-hmm. So I do it all, and that's something that you notice in the Army of Orange, that I actually promote everything, not just one way, everything, and I want everybody to get along. Hating your neighbor is never a good thing. There's nothing ever good comes of it. So
well, that's a good segue kind of into my next question, which is, tell me about the Army of Orange. What can you give me just a history lesson on it? Maybe how it came to be, what the purpose is, and just anything else you want to share about it.
Well, about 10 years ago, we had a pretty big push trying to ban some types of hunting. And hunters came together from all over the country to a meeting that happened in Virginia. And when I say all over the country, there were trucks there with license plates from California, Arkansas, Louisiana. It was unbelievable, the turnout. And I stood there in the parking lot and I looked out across the parking lot, and all I saw was orange. It was orange everywhere. Orange hats, orange shirts. It was an entire, and at the time I said, sea of orange. The more I thought about that, I said, we're not fishermen. Well, some of us fish, but I mean, we're here because we hunt. So I said, this looks like an army of orange. And I took out my phone and I created a Facebook page called An Army of Orange. And I decided the "an" was one bridge too far, so we eventually dropped that. So it's like-minded individuals, still hunters, dog hunters, anybody that wants to keep the tradition of hunting alive. I call them agitators. They constantly want to stir and cause conflict. And anytime you got a couple of people that want to agree, like a still hunter and a dog hunter that want to get together and agree with each other, they really want to cause grief with that. But personally, I think that we're all being what Stalin used to call useful idiots, because I just had a alert pop up on my phone. Can you still hear me okay?
Oh, yes.
All right. Said I had low signal strength. So but the term useful idiot is when you want to push an agenda, you get two groups to argue with each other and destroy each other, and then you do whatever you want to do. So there's many states that allow high fence hunting where you pay them several $1,000s to go in for one day and shoot a tame deer in a pen. And if that's what people like, that's great. More power to them. I hope they enjoy it. But I really don't want them doing it here, because I like having my 10,000 acres that I can go run dogs on, or I can go still hunt on. And I can do it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days if I want to, for less than one trip to the deer pen. So it's more of an outdoor lifestyle than it is hunting. Because like I told you, I've shot one deer this year. I've had the opportunity to shoot several. I missed one yesterday, and that was still hunting. I wasn't running dogs, and I, I think I gave the deer a haircut. I got real close to it, but I missed it. So it happens. Did I answer your question, Sam?
You did. But one, just another maybe follow up to that. So the reason people would be engaged with the Army of Orange is just to share information, and to kind of create that brotherhood of pulling people together, no matter what kind of hunting they're into, to protect hunting rights in their part of the country.
That's exactly right. For example, I don't know whether you followed along or not. We have several events posted right now. As a matter of fact, one's taking place tomorrow. It's going to be a half-day hunt down at the Sand Hills, and public's invited. I started noticing when we first started up the Army of Orange and a couple other things I got my fingers into. I had people. I got somebody calling me. I'm sorry. I had people.
All right.
I had people that were wanting to go hunting with dogs. I've never experienced this before. I wish I could do it. And then we had limitations. My family, we own part of our hunting club, we lease part of our hunting club, but it is a hunting club. And we have bylaws and rules. And just because my last name's Edwards doesn't mean I get to break the rules. So I couldn't take but one guest. And I'd have 10 or 15 people that wanted to go hunting. So we started offering events where we would go to game lands and hunt. We got several houndsmen together that had dogs, And we would try and go to a game land where everything was open. It was deer season, bear season, rabbit season. If it was a game animal, you could take it. We've got an event happening tomorrow. We've got one happening Friday. We've got one happening Saturday. And I think we've got them scheduled into December right now. And we will be scheduling more. I've actually had somebody come from Maine. I had a whole family come from Maine to North Carolina to hunt deer with dogs. And they brought me some.
Well, take us through like what the day looks like when people come to an event like that. What happens? What happens throughout the day?
I can take you through what we did last Saturday. It was an event. Last Saturday, I hunted with Big Dog Hunting Club at Caswell Game Lands. We had a hunt that was sponsored by Fallen Outdoors. So I got up about 3:30 in the morning, got my things together. I had to get tracking collars for the dogs. I had to get the dogs loaded, and I had to drive to the game lands. We use GMRS radios to talk with each other. I say GMRS, they're GMRS and FRS. GMRS requires a license, FRS does not. They use the same frequency. So you got some people that have a license, some people that don't, but it doesn't matter because we can talk to each other. And it's legal. There's a lot of people that use other types of radios. CBs are legal, and then there's some other radios that get into a gray area. But we're using GMRS. So we can talk to each other. So I get up, get the dogs loaded, food, water for the dogs, and I drive an hour and 40 minutes up to Caswell Game Lands in Caswell County. A large group is met there. There were probably 60 or 70 people at this event. It's one of the larger events. And like I say, we had a sponsor for this event. We had the Fallen Outdoors. So we had a couple of guys, I think there was actually 4 of them, that were handling the dogs. And we set out stander lines. So your standers are in the woods on stands where the deer are likely to come, just like you're still hunting. The only difference is we had 10 or 12 dogs on the ground. And in this particular hunt, we had people designated to handle the dogs. So I got to my stand, I set up, and I sat and waited. And I saw a few deer, and I didn't shoot at any. I just enjoyed being out there in the outdoors. Mm-hmm. So we got together, cleaned the deer together. We shared the meat. We shared fellowship. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, all the deer were cleaned. I called all the kids together and read a book to them. And it's actually a book that I wrote. So we'll talk about the book later. But the kids and the adults all enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. So then you got to drive home. You got to put the dogs up. When you're done with a day of hunting with dogs, you're 14, 15 hours into it by the time you hang your boots up. By the time you take your boots off, you're 14 or 15 hours into it. Mm-hmm. It's hunting the easy way, I think. Mm-hmm. That's what people say anyway.
Are the people that show up to events, are they brand new? Have they ever been on a hunt period, or is it new to hunting with dogs?
It's a mix of everything. Mm-hmm. In 2022, we had a hunt at Bertie Game Lands, which, by the way, is right next to a prison, a pretty large prison, which is kind of interesting. But we had a group there that were seasoned hunters. We had some guys that were seasoned still hunters. They actually took their climbing stands and went and climbed some trees in the block we were going to hunt and sat there and took part of the hunt. But we had a couple of younger hunters, one of which was 15 years old, and he had been hunting once before. He had been still hunting, and then he came to this hunt. He was hunting with dogs, and he had an adult with him. And there were actually 2 other kids that were his friends. He killed his first deer that day, and we did the full ceremony where that his peers dipped their finger in the deer's blood and smeared it on his face. And that all took place right there. We could see the prison from where we were, and there were actually 2 game wardens that were there with us that day too. So it was a fun day. There was a mix of all types of hunters, and we obeyed the laws. That's the key thing, is we obey the laws. The people I run around with are not outlaws.
Well, tell me about Fallen Outdoors.
Fallen Outdoors is a veterans organization that supports disabled vets. Um, I don't want to get too far into describing what they do. I can just tell you they're a 501c charity, and their goal is to support veterans and veterans in outdoor activities.
Well, you've mentioned several times hunting game lands. Is there, in my part of the state, there just aren't any. I mean, really, unless you have access to private land, you're going to have to drive to get to somewhere decent to hunt game lands. Now, I understand in the eastern part of our state, and even the Piedmont, the central kind of part of our state, that's very different. There's quite a bit of access there. What do people need to know? What advice would you give to someone who maybe is interested in hunting game lands but never has?
Well, the first thing they should do is go to the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission page, their website, not their Facebook page. Go to their website. They're the people that run the game lands. They have a whole section on their website about game lands, and I'm trying to pull it up right now. I'll caution you a little bit. Some of the game land documentation on their website is not as user friendly as it should be, but I will say it's getting better. I'm going to look and see what the western part of the state looks like.
What Todd, is there game land? Is all game land created equal, or do certain game lands have different rules versus others?
There's different rules at every game land. For example, in North Carolina, in eastern North Carolina, where I'm at, I'm looking at the map, and you said you're around Charlotte.
Yeah,
there's Toxaway, there's Headwater State Forest, DuPont State Forest, Green River, and then a little bit to your north, you got South Mountains, North Bend, and Pigasaw National Forest. So you've got, I'm sure I butchered that name, by the way, and Cold Mountain. You've got a lot right there around you. I want to get my information right, so let me find the. Okay, right here around Jacksonville, North Carolina, you've got Stones Creek, you got Holly Shelter, and Angola Bay. Angola Bay is about 22,000 acres, I think, and half of Angola Bay is absolute wilderness. And when I say absolute wilderness, there's no roads going into it. If you go back in there, you're in there. There's no campground there. But right across the road from Angola Bay is Holly Shelter. Holly Shelter has a campground, and they allow access 6 days a week. So does Angola Bay. Now, Stones Creek, which is right down the road, allows dog hunting 3 days a week and allows still hunting 3 days a week. And I think Holly Shelter is the same way. I know Angola Bay is 6 days a week.
So the best thing to do is really just go to your state's wildlife page or Department of Wildlife Resource Commission, whatever they call it in your state, and just educate yourself. Just find out what's close by and find out what the rules are for that particular game land.
That's exactly right. And it's like anything else in life. You find out what the rules are, and you try and follow the rules. That's how you're successful in life. Is find out what the rules are and follow the rules. I had an idea just a moment ago that I was going to mention, and I completely forgot it. It went right out of my head. We were talking about game lands.
Well, while you're thinking about it, I want to fire something else at you.
Okay.
So what do you think some of the biggest challenges are that these future hunters are going to face? And one thing that was really interesting is kind of how you frame the useful idiot kind of argument. I think that's really interesting to think about how hound hunters and still hunters, especially in our area, our part of the country, it's a lot of deer hunters, don't get along very well, it seems like. And there's some friction there. But who do you think maybe is the outside force stoking that?
Well, you got a couple of different outside forces. One is you got your animal rights activists that don't want any of us to hunt. Recently, there was a protest. The Army of Orange covered this, by the way, and we're actually helping the guy raise some money for a lawyer. I'm not going to call his name in the podcast, but young man just outside Tallahassee had someone come to his house, open all of his dog pens, turn all of his dogs loose, and took one of his dogs, had the dog in the car trying to steal it. The interesting thing is this person lost their keys while they were there, so they couldn't leave, and they called her on the property with a dog in the car. So I just find it interesting that the day before was a big bear hunting protest in Tallahassee. And I don't know if you know much about Florida's geography, but you know, Florida's got this long peninsula down there. About halfway that peninsula is a city called Clearwater.
Yes.
And this lady was from Clearwater, but she was all the way up in the panhandle of Florida turning dogs loose. That's not normal behavior, you know? So you've got a group of anti-hunters that would really like for the hunters to fight with each other. They would love it. And then you've got some people that really just want to be the only people in the woods. They don't want anybody to hunt but them. Their way's right. That's the only way you should ever do it, is their way. And they prefer that they just be the only one that hunt. You got different type of hunters. You got people that are trophy hunters. You got people like me that could care less about an antler. I've taken some pretty nice deer. I've got pictures of them online, but that's the only place they exist because I've never got them mounted. But some people like that. My dad had a nice deer mounted when I was growing up. It just never really appealed to me. And then you got the people that want to make hunting a business.
We'll talk about that a little bit. I think that's an interesting angle.
So there's some states where you can do what's called a high fence area, where you put up a high fence, you cage your deer, you put out feeders. You basically got tame deer in a large pen. And you got the feeders on a timer. The feeders go off, the deer come to the feeders, and you got a guide sitting there with you telling you, okay, you paid for such and such deer, you can take that one, or that one. And you shoot the deer and they process it up and you take it home with you. They'll do your mount, they'll do everything right there. Don't get me wrong. I just got another text message. I'm sorry. The people that want to do that, that's fine and dandy. But where it's happened, recreational hunting is gone, except on public land. Because private land, if you don't own it, which we, like I said, we own some, but if you don't own it and you're leasing it, the high fence area, guy can pay you $40 or $50 an acre to lease the land. It's worth it. It's worth it to him because he's making tens of thousands of dollars every time somebody pulls a trigger. So the biggest challenge we're going to face is money. Big money wanting to get into hunting. It's illegal in North Carolina to sell game animals. It never fails. I'll have a bunch of people in the forum. I'll have people in my inbox. I've already got people in my inbox. Hey man, let me get some deer meat from you. I'll pay you for it. No, you won't pay me for it. That's illegal. At least it is in North Carolina. And I know what it was I was going to tell you now. If you want to ask me a follow-up question on that, I'll answer it, or we can jump back to what I was talking about because I've got it in front of me.
Oh, that's okay. Jump back.
So you asked me about game lands, about how to know what's going on. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give you an example. Bachelor Bay Game Lands, Bertie, Washington County. It's 7-day week entry. There's an area where you can't bear hunt, and it's doe season from October 18th to January 1st. It's what they call the maximum season. There's no restriction on firearms or anything. It's pretty much wide open. So in the same county, Bertie County Game Lands, 6-day entry. This is where we have our events, is this one. It's called the Johnston Track Game Land. The discharge of centerfire rifles is prohibited, and you can't target practice there. Like I said, it's right next to a prison. But shotgun only. So in the same county, you've got two different rules. You can only hunt Bertie Johnston Track 6 days a week. You can hunt Bachelor Bay 7 days a week. In Bladen County, you can't use a rifle larger than a .22 caliber. There's different rules, different game lands. In the same county can have different game lands.
You just really need to study this stuff. I mean, it can be kind of complex. I know in our part of the state, we're in the same state, North Carolina, but in our part of the state, you cannot hunt deer with dogs.
That's true.
Just period. You cannot.
But I have people that drive from Charlotte area to come hunt with dogs here. Mm-hmm. And that's an argument that I have. I have people say, well, I shouldn't have to drive to get away from dogs. Well, you don't really have to drive. There's the game lands here. There's some that offer dogs, some that don't. There's private land. But I got people that are from Gastonia that have deer dogs that drive here to hunt. And I made that drive last week. It's pretty long drive. I got people driving.
That's a haul.
It's a haul.
North Carolina's a long state. It's deceiving, but yeah, it's a very long state.
So everybody really needs to get along. That's the key, and that's the key to the Army of Orange is nothing's ever come from hating your neighbor. So I sent you a link right before we got started of a snippet of something that I wrote back in 2016. Mm-hmm. And it's a picture that was taken by a friend of mine named Tyler. It's a field trial. And it's where people take their dogs and they take them for a competition. This is a big field trial in this area. It supports the local fire department. And on that day, there were 575 trucks. And I forgot how many dogs, but there was a whole bunch of people there.
Wow.
And I saw this picture. He sent me this picture. He actually sent it to the Army of Orange page. He's one of the admins on the page. And I got a little inspiration from looking at the picture. And I wrote what I call the most plagiarized and the most copied story on Facebook. The full work is about 4 pages long. And it's had total several million views. And People just stole it, took my name off of it, put their name on it. It went viral. It's gone viral several times. It's gone viral this year on another page. And I sent him a little message and said, "Hey, would you mind putting my name on that since I wrote it?" And but it starts out and says, "Always remember, when liberty turns to tyranny, the armed citizen still gets to vote." Our hunting brothers in the United States make up the largest private infantry unit in the world, with a sniper corps several million strong. Our bow hunters are some of the best at concealment and can hide and get in close. Our bird hunters only shoot at moving targets. These guys are really skilled with a shotgun. Our rabbit and raccoon hunters go places that many fear to tread. From the thickest briar patch to the deepest swamp, they follow their prey. Houndsmen are literally the cavalry. They know how to coordinate a hunt over large distances and are quite skilled at hitting moving targets with rifles. We might argue and fuss amongst ourselves, but you outsiders best leave us alone. The U.S. hunters as a whole make up the largest standing army on the planet. Many of us are veterans. Sometimes you're not aware of the power you actually possess. And that's the preamble to the writing that I'm talking about. There's a whole lot more about it. I even talk about that our four-wheeler cousins, the ones that don't hunt, but they're into off-roading. They're some of the best shade tree mechanics on the world. You know, they can fix a busted axle with a stick of gum and a paper clip and get themselves home with it. So as outdoorsmen, we do a lot, and we have a lot of skills that I didn't realize until I went in the military, that everybody didn't grow up like I did.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you're very fortunate to grow up out in the country and be around hunters and have that. You kind of are, at least a lot of folks kind of probably our age bracket, grew up kind of feral. You just were turned loose.
Yeah, you got that right. So I'll tell you about another adventure that I went on. You know, you're talking about that you can't hunt deer where you're at with dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's very few places left in the country that you can hunt deer with dogs. And that's something that people need to understand. The ones that want to do it need to understand that it's very limited where you can do it, even though around here it seems like everybody does it and you can do it everywhere. That's not the case. So back in 2019, I got a phone call that I could not believe. It was the Idaho Department of Fish and Game and the University of Idaho. They were looking somebody that would be willing to travel to Idaho for a few weeks with a pack of hunting dogs that would run elk.
Huh.
They were doing a study on elk and trying to get them out of the cornfields. And I told the guy that called me, I said, well, I can tell you right now, my dogs will probably run an elk. I've got a litter of puppies that were just born. If you'll send me some elk legs, I'm sure I can get them to run an elk. By the time we get out there, they'll be running elk. But I'll tell you this, they're not going to run them off. They're going to come right back in the field. And the only way to get them out of the field and keep them out of the field is to shoot them. So I told him that before I ever went and before I ever took their money. So we talked. The governor of Idaho got involved and granted me a special commission that I had permission to run up to 7 dogs on elk and deer in Idaho. So my son and I loaded up. We had a brand new Toyota Tundra. We put the dog box on the Tundra. We loaded up and we drove from North Carolina to Idaho with a box full of dogs and enough firepower to start a small war. And we went elk hunting with Idaho in Idaho in the 21st century. Hadn't been done before, hadn't been done since. There's 2 people that have legally done it, and that's me and my son.
Mm-hmm.
So And it was exactly like I said. We ran them out of the cornfields and they came right back. I had a vantage point that I watched a young bull elk. He ran out of the cornfield, nearly ran into me. I was standing on the four-wheeler seat watching him come, and he had a GPS collar on him, so we weren't going to take him. And I jumped off the four-wheeler and ran because I was pretty sure he was going to run into the four-wheeler. But he turned at the last minute and shot out into the desert. If you've never been out there, it's interesting. The cornfields are circular because they have an irrigation point in the middle, and the irrigation goes around in a circle, and that's how the crops grow. So you can be standing next to a corn stalk and walk 15 feet and be in an arid, open desert because that's where the irrigation stops. It's different. That's all I'm gonna say is it's different. So I had the vantage point to watch this elk. He comes running out of the cornfield. My dogs are chasing him. They're a ways behind him. Elk are big and elk are fast. It sounded like a horse galloping through the field. But he runs out, runs into the open desert, and I watch him run out towards this mountain. And he banks right, just like a race car. I can see him for a mile or two from where I'm at because there's nothing blocking my vision. It's wide open desert. He banks right, turns, runs along the edge of this mountain that's to my right, hooks, and comes right back and runs right back in the same cornfield we just ran him out of. I was standing there next to the head of Idaho Fish and Game when that happened. And he looked at me and said, well, you got him on your feet and you got him moving. But he's right back in the cornfield. I said, that's what I told you guys was going to happen 8 months ago when we first started talking about this project. I've seen, when I was younger, the state biologist, the wildlife biologist, would come and get the kids from the clubhouse at the hunting club because he figured the kids would keep stuff to themselves about where the big deer were and such. They had some GPS collars. Not, there wasn't GPS at the time. It was telemetry collars on the deer, on some of the deer. And there was this great big buck. He was big buck that stayed right in the middle of the hunting club, almost dead center of the hunting clubs where he lived. We ran him that day with the dogs and ran him. He went way off the club. Excuse me. So the biologist came up that night and took a couple of us, and we went out because we knew the roads. We could tell them where to go and how to get places, but they figured we wouldn't tell everybody else where the deer was, and maybe their deer wouldn't get killed. So that big buck that had been run that day and run way off the club and ran into a couple of other clubs, he was back by nightfall, back in where he lived. So he was right back home.
I love you sharing that story because I think so many. I've heard so many still hunters, especially deer hunters around here, complain a lot about, in our case, coon hunters hunting at night. That the coon hunters are going to mess up the deer hunting, and that has not been my experience because I grew up coon hunting a lot and have seen many really nice deer taken the next day after we've been in a place coon hunting. Speaking dogs, exactly to what you said, they're back in there.
Yeah, dogs don't run the coons off. I've got some videos on the Army of Orange where we're coon hunting, and the deer is bedded down 30, 40 yards from us. We're looking at the deer, and the dog's on the tree. So it doesn't affect it at all. I mean, we can run the deer with the dogs, and they're going to come back and lay right back down where they were at. I had somebody argue with me one time and said, well, I had this really nice buck on camera, and the dogs ran him, and I haven't seen him since. I said, well, he left on somebody's tailgate. That's what happened with that one. That one's gone. Which brings me, I'll hit a couple other points, things that I hear. I hear that people say, oh, people run deer through my property to run the deer off my property. People run dogs through my property.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some people out there casting dogs where they shouldn't be. But we'll start by saying that the North Carolina Landowner Protection Act says that it is illegal to release a dog on property that you don't have permission to hunt. Okay? So if somebody's backing up to your property without permission, turn their dogs loose to run the deer off your property, they're breaking the law. Call game warden. If the game warden says I need evidence, trail cameras are on special this weekend, buddy. You can get a couple of nice cameras for $100 that are solar powered that'll talk to your cell phone. Take your climbing stand, climb a tree, put them up, catch them in the act, prosecute them. I got no problem with it. I'll stand next to you and say they were wrong, lock them up. Shouldn't do it. Now let me say this. I'll use my club as an example. We have 10,000 acres. That's our club. We're bordered by another club has 15,000 acres. 10 plus 15 is 25,000, right?
That's right.
Guess what these two clubs do? They can come on our property, we can go on their property. They don't come over to our property and shoot a deer, we don't go over to their property and shoot a deer. But you know what? Sometimes we're pursuing a deer, guess what that deer does? Run straight to the property line, across the property line. I got a good story about that happening that I'll tell you that happened probably 10 years ago. But the point is that the deer came from our property first and went over there. Club next to us doesn't care. The family farms around us, the majority of those farms belong to club members, family members. Most of the land around where we hunt, we either own it or control it. So we don't have a lot of property disputes. We don't. Mainly because it's our land. Or we have agreements with our neighbors. So, but if a dog starts trailing a deer and he travels across the property line, that means the deer traveled across the property line. Mm-hmm. Or the coon or the coyote. I coyote hunt too, by the way. Matter of fact, if I'm hunting anything and I see a coyote, it just became a coyote hunt. I'm not a fan of coyotes. But if it travels across that property line and we don't catch it because it went or whatever, it's because that's where the game went. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that we're hunting, that our club itself is 10,000 acres, and then we control or have agreements with probably close to 30,000 acres. It's the people that are trying to hunt a postage stamp that usually have the biggest complaint. And I'm talking both sides of the fence here. I'm talking about the steel hunter and the dog hunter. I know a guy that has 10 acres. And that's a decent little property. I think I could be happy with 10 acres trying to hunt it. But he's got a little corn pile right in the middle of it. And every deer he sees on trail cameras is his deer. How many deer you reckon are living on 10 acres?
Not many.
Not many. That's right. Not many. But, that's his little dream. And he's watched the TV shows. And he knows that there's a 200 class buck behind every tree. And it's somebody else's fault why he hadn't got that deer yet. But, and then you got the outlaw houndsman. And I'll be honest, I can't stand these folks. I turn them into game warden myself if I catch them. These are the guys that lease 5 acres in a block of 500 acres, right? Mm-hmm. And they turn the dogs loose on their 5 acres and then run the whole block. They go sit on the public road all the way around the block and run the whole block. That's not right.
Yeah, it'd make me crazy too.
That's not right. I mean,
No.
but the sad thing is, it's not illegal,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something I'd really like to figure out how to make illegal, Sam, because it's not
Mm-hmm.
right. And you want to talk about making your neighbors mad? I get it. If the people that own that other 500 acres are trying to hunt, and they're trying to steal hunt, you dead wrong doing that.
Well, Todd, I've got some good friends in Virginia that I coon hunt with and worked with over the years, and they sent me some very disturbing news in the past couple of weeks about this same kind of I don't know if it's an argument or a push or there's landowners that are very motivated in Virginia to keep dog hunters off of their property because they've had so many bad experiences with what I believe you're describing, which are the kind of outlaw hunters that are. I mean, everybody carries a cell phone today, so they've caught so many of them being rude to the landowners, and it's as much as my heart breaks for the houndsmen, the true houndsmen in the sport that are doing it the right way. Boy, it doesn't take many bad apples to just really ruin it, and I feel for them because I think they're going to lose a lot of their rights up there.
Yeah, we're going to lose a lot of rights everywhere if people don't behave.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Well, let me ask you another question before I forget. You mentioned earlier that you were at a hunt. I think it was maybe the one put on by the Fallen Outdoors group for the veterans. But you said you were reading a book and you wrote a book. So tell us about that. I was thinking you said you had something called the Beagle Book Club, but could you maybe flesh that out for us?
Yeah, it's a little project like we were talking before we turned the cameras on about little hobby projects.
Mm-hmm.
I've created a whole little universe that's called Beagle Book Club, and it's centered around a couple of sets of twins, Andy and Mandy Beagle, and Princess and Chaos that are coonhounds. They are cadets at the Canine Special Ops Academy, and they learn different lessons in every story, and every lesson is a lesson that we as people need to learn ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the book that I read at the hunt was called The Christmas Trail, and I'll give you the highlights of it. Andy and Mandy Beagle have a little cousin named Molly that stays with them, and she's mischievous. She's young, and she's always getting into something. So she hears some noise. It's Christmas Eve. Everybody else has gone to sleep. She's being the typical kid that can't sleep on Christmas Eve. And she's listening to, she hears some rustling outside, and she has a smell that she don't recognize. So she goes outside to investigate, and she finds these little teeny tiny deer prints, and she starts following them and barking on them. And anyway, one thing leads to another, and she finds a little teeny tiny baby reindeer that's about the same size she is. And his name is Comet Jr. He has run away from the North Pole because things weren't going his way, and now he's lost down here in Cedar Holler. So these two unlikely misfits pair up, and she gets him back north. He's lost his way, he doesn't know how to go, but Molly can smell so good that she can smell his trail all the way back to the North Pole. And her nose leads him back to the North Pole, where Santa Paws is waiting for them, and he's worried to death because his little reindeer has run away. And his dad, Comet, is saying that he's so distraught that there's no way he's going to be able to pull the sleigh if he can't find his son. So that's the short story of a Christmas trail.
I love it. So these are stories that are probably targeted more towards younger folks, but certainly anybody of any age group could read it. But they have some kind of moral to the story. There's something, there's hunting stuff in there, and you've got the hounds, that angle. But there's also just a good old moral story to it somewhere in there.
That is correct.
I love it.
There's always a moral story, and there's something there for the kids, and the same story has something there for the adults.
Mm-hmm.
So if you read the book as a child, it's going to say one thing to you, and then if you read it again as an adult, it's going to say something else to you. And what you said about you're not in it for the money. My first book, I've written about 20 Beagle Book Club books, and I've published a bunch of short stories on Facebook. But my first book has been released, and I released it on Amazon to be able to read it for free on the Kindle software. So if you've got a Kindle, you can read it on your Kindle. If you've got Kindle software, you can read it on your smartphone or your tablet. So it's not about the money. It's about heritage. I'm getting older, and it's another story. I had a near-death experience in 2023. Was actually dead for about 15 minutes. I'll tell you that story if you got time. We're an hour into it now. So, but I realize I'm a dinosaur, and you don't see many dinosaurs walking around anymore,
Mm-hmm.
But we know they were here because they left deep prints. And that's my goal, is I want to leave deep prints. I want people to remember that my generation was here. And I want people to know that some of us, at least, when I'm talking about houndsmen, are not criminals.
Mm-hmm.
The key word is respect.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have respect.
So I don't want to, as we start to wrap up and wind down, I do want to give you the opportunity is there anything that I didn't ask you about that I should have? Anything else you want to cover or promote that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, I mean, I'm sure I'll think of something after we hang up.
Well, it's the magic of editing. We can have something later.
It's the magic of editing. That's right. So,
that's right.
So, Sam, who are your friends up in Virginia?
Well, Wayne Campbell, Timber Chopper Kennels. I've known Wayne for a long time. He used to be right outside of Richmond, and it got so crazy there. He tried to move farther out, kind of into the country, but he's been a red bone guy for, oh my goodness, he's got to be around 80-ish now. And when I got my first set of red bones as a youngster, that's where I got and ended up that first, you know how it is. The very first dog I ever got was the best dog I ever had.
That's the way it always is.
Just magical. And I chased, kind of repeating him and getting another dog like him, and never did. I mean, had some good ones, had some, very blessed here to have some very nice hounds over the years. Very proud of them. But that first one was the best I've ever hunted. Just a different breed. He's something else. But yeah, and just kept up, went and talked to him often, and he's a bear hunter as well. Uses his dog's own bear, and he belongs to a hunting club, and we've talked quite a bit. And this is a concern of mine. I may get out in the weeds here just a little bit, but a concern of mine is that I feel like what I'm seeing in the hunting world is a move towards this becoming kind of a rich man's sport, a rich man's game. And I'm talking across the board, from anything from what used to be really cheap to get into, like rabbit hunting. Just getting a couple of beagles, you get beagles for $50 or something. People just give them to you. Boy, it is very different today versus when I was a kid. And deer hunting, we didn't have deer hunters around here when I was a kid. That's just not what was popular. I've seen coon hunting just climb up to be one of the most popular things I've ever seen, like back in the 80s. 70s and 80s around here, and just really is fundamentally very different today. Um, Back then, people cared more about a good hide dog because the hide prices were so good. A lot of people supplemented their family income with a good coon dog, and the hide market collapsed. Um,
Why did
and
the hide
everything
market?
changed, and it went more to a competition style dog. And the money's made instead of providing hides, it's made, winning truck hunts and side by sides. It's just, but to get in these things, yeah, I mean, you're talking $1,000 entry fees or more
Right.
to go to the hunt. So I fear that the day when just a good old country kid like me had those dreams of going and getting an old hound from down the road and having a chance to go compete and do well is just not going to work out very well in the future for kids, because you're going to have money to go get the right kind of dog to compete in the future. And then it's the hunting access to hunting land. And boy, where we are in North Carolina, on this side of the state, buddy, I'm telling you, I want to put up a sign that says we're full as people are driving into the state, because, man, everybody post COVID started moving to North Carolina. It seemed like we were one of the top 3 states, maybe still, where people were transplanting and coming here. And we talk about a lot of little family farms around me, gone, turned into housing developments. And so a lot of the local hunting land is just gone. We're going to have to start really joining clubs to have a place to hunt.
Right. Well, let me tell you this.
Again,
I've been
money that you didn't have to have when I was a kid. You just talked to the local hunter, and he wanted to get rid of the nuisance kind of critters anyway, for eating his crops or tearing his corn down or whatever they were getting into. Boy, that's changed now. It's whoever has the deep pockets. And for our area, a lot of that it's still hunters. It's deer hunters that lease up a lot of land where we are, and that's going to be one of the friction areas for us in the future, I think.
right. Well, let me tell you this. I've been to other states. I've been to the big states. I've been to the big public land states like Idaho and Utah. And access to land out there is no problem. The whole state's public land, just about. There's public land everywhere. You know what they don't have? Big game tags. You got to get in the lottery for a big game tag. And, when I suggested, well, why don't you just shoot the elk? If the elk herd's so big it's causing you trouble, why don't you take them? The animal rights activists are so embedded in their fish and game out there, they don't even want you to hunt at all.
Mm-hmm.
They were thinning the herd with snipers, shooting the elk, and then taking the meat to hunters for the hungry, rather than open the season and issue tags to hunters because of the conflict that it was going to cause. So they were killing the elk in secret, basically. And it's been several years now, so I don't think they'll be too mad with me for saying that. But I mean, that's what they were doing. They could have solved their problem with hunters. But no, they didn't want to do that. So that's coming this way too. I sort of hinted on it with the bear hunt protest in Florida, and it's coming this way. But those folks are so embedded in the fish and game that it's they got plenty of land to hunt, but no ability. Mm-hmm. If that even makes sense.
Well, Todd, as we wrap up, let's kind of end on this. We'll try to be as positive as we can. What advice would you give to a youngster that's interested in the outdoors, interested in hunting, and in particular hunting with hounds? What kind of advice would you give them?
Well, number one, Go to beaglebookclub.com and read those stories. It won't cost you anything. Go read them. Go watch the videos. You'll learn something. But what advice would I give them? Be respectful. Listen to your elders. And if you're going to hunt with a dog, would you rather have one or two good dogs that listen to you, or a whole truck full of dogs that when you turn them loose, they go 18 different directions and you spend the rest of the day chasing your dogs? I have an older dog. They call him Bugle. He's got a really big mouth. So we were tracking a deer yesterday, yeah. And I pulled my truck over where we were trying to track the deer, and I took him out of the dog box and put him on the ground. And they're like, "You're not going to put him on a leash?" I said, "No, I don't need a leash." And I called him and I pointed where I wanted him to go, and he went right in where I told him to go and started tracking. And when I got ready to come back to the truck, he and I walked back to the truck. He jumped on tailgate and I put him in the dog box. Well, I've had him since he was born. He was born at my house. I've raised him since he was a puppy, and I've worked with him, and he's my friend, and I'm his friend. We truly have a symbiotic relationship when we hunt. And if you're going to hunt with dogs, you got to work with your dog. Good dogs aren't bought, they're made. And I won't even say that I've got good dogs. I'll say I got mediocre dogs, but they're fun to me, you know? But the main thing is going to be respect.
That's it. That's it. Be respectful with your elders. Get good dogs. I'm with you. If you have a bunch of bad dogs that don't listen, you end up dog hunting more than you're hunting whatever it is you're trying to hunt, whether it's deer, coyote, or
right. But work with your dog and work with your neighbors. Nothing's ever come. I hear people all the time say, "Well, my neighbor did this. What should I do?" We should go over and have a conversation with your neighbor. That's what you should do. And it shouldn't be, your conversation shouldn't be fussing and cussing. Maybe sit down and have a pie. Maybe show up with a pie or a piece or cake or some food and say, "Hey man, let's sit down and talk. Let's go to the diner." So many problems could be solved with a piece of pie. I mean, really. But people want to disrespect each other, and then egos get involved.
Oh yes.
If I could give one person some advice, do something you love. And if that involves hunting with a hound, and you're going to start getting your hound, work with your dog. Let your dog know what his name is. Your dog should be glad to see you.
I love it. Sage advice, Todd. Well, listen, folks won't know this, but I appreciate you taking time out the night before Thanksgiving. So I wish you a happy Thanksgiving tomorrow, too, and hope you have a big time with your family and friends. But Todd, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and a little bit about yourself and what you're into. And for folks listening, please go check out the Army of Orange as well as the Beagle Book Club.
Yeah, I'm also, my personal page is Tick Bite NC, and there's no K in Tick Bite. That's just the way it's spelled. TICBITE. You'll find more personal stories about me there, and you'll find Beagle Book Club stories there. Tick Bite's a little piece of land that's between the Contentnia Creek and the Neuse River. It's a little peninsula back up in there. It's a swamp. And that's where I'm from. So, country boy from Tick Bite, North Carolina, wound up walking the halls of the Pentagon unescorted.
I love it.
And could walked into the NSA and could go anywhere I wanted to in the National Security Agency. So I had an interesting life,
Mhm.
and now I want to be a dinosaur. I want to leave those deep prints. Sam,
I
thank you
love
so
it.
much for the opportunity to come on.
Oh, thank you, Todd. I really appreciate it. Well, Todd, I think that's great. I've got plenty of stuff to use. This is really good. I really do appreciate it. That's really interesting. I certainly learned a lot that I didn't know, and I can't wait to start recommending get this out so people can hopefully get their kids, if nothing else, get their kids into the Beagle Book Club. Do you have those books illustrated?
I'm working on illustrating them. I've got some slight illustrations. There's only one published right now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to be published in paperback and possibly hardback in the future.
Okay.
And there are some illustrations, but they're written more along the lines for older kids at the moment. They're not, the picture book.
Uh-huh.
But
And the reason I asked, it's kind of selfish in a way, but I wrote a book kind of for that same age group, probably young adults, um, about coon hunting. I've been sitting on this book, Todd, for 10, 15 years. It's a good little story, but I have no illustrations. Don't know if I need them or not. But I've never self-published or tried to use Amazon or anything. Been a little bit intimidated by it. Honestly, just hadn't taken the time and pursue it. Um, but I was just very curious to know how hard it is.
it's not the easiest thing I've ever done,
Yeah.
and it's not the hardest thing I've ever done. I'm getting ready to send you a link. This is an animated illustration.
Okay.
Um, but it's from A Christmas Trail, and this is Molly Beagle sitting on Comet Junior's back, and they're about to head north to the North Pole. Molly promised to lead Comet Junior back to the North Pole. They traveled past frozen rivers, snowstorms, and tricky Arctic foxes, but the brave little beagle was always there to guide him.
I love it. Well, how did you create that yourself? The images, the illustration, or
I'm
did you
using
have
a
somebody help?
I'm using a graphic generator, and I
Uh huh.
basically described what I wanted, and it generated it. And it sounds easy, right? But that picture that you're looking at right there probably took me 4 hours.
Wow.
Um, Going back and forth with the computer. No, I don't like this. Do this. Change this, and the computer gets moody, and sometimes it'll completely change everything. It'll be like, "Oh, you're getting so picky. Let me show you." And but yeah, I can't draw a straight line with a ruler, so I need help as far as illustrations go.
Well, how the graphic generation, is that software that you get? Do you have to buy it? How's that work?
Um, I'm paying a subscription
Uh
each
huh.
month. It's not tremendously expensive, but I'm spending about $50 a month
Uh huh.
subscribing. That's smart too, right? I'm spending $50 a month, and I'm not taking anywhere near that in. So, um,
Well, your heart's in the right place. Would you recommend that software
um,
or that
Grok,
or okay? I'll check it out. That's
GR.
something it's actually on my to-do list. I keep a physical to-do list, and it's been on my to-do list for about 2 years now to get this book published. And I don't know that I necessarily want to spend a lot of time illustrating a lot of different scenes in the book, but I would like to have a nice cover, if nothing else.
Well, I created a
Um,
cover, and I created a chapter picture for every chapter.
I like that. That's good. And for that age group, I think it's probably important to have some illustrations too.
Now, in my mind, I've got a picture book in my mind
Mm-hmm.
that has big pictures on the page and a little bit of words, like for younger kids. I've got the idea and the concept, I just haven't done it yet. It's on my to-do list.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's something I'm definitely interested in myself. And I was interested in using Amazon. Every time I look at Amazon, it's improved. It looks a lot easier today than it was even 4 or 5 years ago to publish. But I fail to see how you would make any money. It's just, they get so much of a cut that I think it's more of a honestly, like charity, like kind of like you got it set up where you just do it because it's the right thing to do. It's not because you're really gonna make any money off of it.
right. Well, I figure eventually, if somebody maybe likes it, maybe my great grandchildren might make some money off of it. Who
Mm-hmm.
knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
But it's not really about the money.
That's how I feel too. I really do. These kids, these youngsters, have so much competing for their time today that we didn't have. There's ball, all kinds of ball that runs year round now. Very different than when you and I were kids. And there's so much competition for their attention and their time. And hunting is just dying out. And I'm just telling you, it's just dying out. If we've got to get ahead of it as best we can.
Well, I can hunt all day long with my dogs and not even pick up my weapon, much less fire it, and have a great day. If
Yeah,
you
I don't even like taking my gun. I mean, when I go rabbit hunting with these guys, I'm like, I'll volunteer to just work the hounds. I just don't care anything about shooting a rabbit. And then somebody really wants something, and they're good eating too, by the way.
They
I
are
love eating
delicious.
rabbit. Yeah, they're very good. But I'm more about the hounds. I love hearing them run. Little old beagles, you can't find something that loves you more than a little beagle that'll just dive into a patch of briars and get cut up to chase a rabbit. I mean, it's the craziest thing, but they seem to love it. So what kind of dog do you run? Do you run like big, like foxhound, like Tree and Walker type dog?
I've got a couple of beagles, and they're supposed to be rabbit dogs,
Mm-hmm.
but Bo is a certified biscuit hound.
Yeah, I know that
He'll
type.
run a rabbit, but he'd prefer for me to walk him over to the rabbit and let him bark at it. And Snoopy will set a rabbit on fire unless he smells a deer or a bear.
Mm.
And we have actually killed bear in front of Snoopy.
Wow.
And he is a red tick beagle.
Yeah.
And he will burn a bear up. He has got a nose on him. He will put one up a tree. We killed a bear in front of him last year. I went hunting by myself a couple of weeks ago, and I just carried my beagles, and I carried a gun, but I didn't take it out of the truck. And I was trying to get on some rabbits. We got a power line runs through the middle of the club, and I was trying to get on some rabbits in that power line.
Yeah.
And I heard Snoopy strike, and I was like, "Oh, he's found a rabbit hot dog." Well, the rabbit weighed about 350 pounds and was black and come running past me like the devil was chasing him. And I said, "Oh, that is not a rabbit." And I was doing everything I could to catch my beagles. I was like, "You boys are not big enough to deal with that bear." So I got on the radio and called one of my cousins that was looking for his dog that he had left out the night before because just couldn't catch her. And she's on our land, so where's she going, right? So I called him and he's like, "Well, did you shoot the bear?" I was like, "No. I'm out here with rabbit shot and a shotgun, and it's in the truck. And what am I going to do? I'm hunting by myself. How am I going to deal with a 350-pound bear? Bear weighs more than I do." And he started laughing. He said, "I'll be over there in a few minutes." But the bear's still alive. So and so are the beagles. But I've got two beagles, and then I've got five tree and walkers,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I don't have anybody trained on coons right now. I've got a young dog that's showing interest in coons, and I think he's probably going to be a coon dog. Um, I had a coon dog, and he died this year. He was 14 years old.
Wow.
Um, but but yeah, I run tree and walkers. My dad had an interesting mix of dogs. He had a red bone walker blue tick mix. They were straight up mutts,
Mm-hmm.
but they would put a deer in a bind. But my dad primarily fox hunted. He was a fox hunter.
Uh-huh.
And Lenoir County, where I grew up, and um, Southport, Bowling Springs Lakes area was
Mm-hmm.
fox hunting country, and where the city of Oak Island is now. Used to, you had to take the ferry over to the island. There was no bridge, and there was a sign when you got off the ferry on the other side of the bridge that said "Fox hunters have the right of way."
I love it.
And that was fox hunting haven. We had a house down there, but there were no deer in Lenoir County back then,
Mm-hmm.
but there were fox everywhere. So I grew up fox hunting, and we didn't shoot the fox; we just ran them.
Mm-hmm.
Which is another. I'm gonna keep you all night. Which is another Army of Orange story. You might want to edit this one in somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That story I started off reading you, where I read you the preamble.
Yes.
I wrote a whole article about it, and then I had some feedback and people saying, "Oh, hunters would never get involved in any type of conflict like that if it were to come to our shores." So I
Mm-hmm.
actually started giving examples of the swamp fox down in South Carolina, um, fighting in the war. He wasn't regular army. He was militia, and
That's right.
that how militia had fought in every war that the United States has had on our soil. Um, and then I talked about aiding police. I was probably about 12 years old, and there was a knock at the front door. I opened the door, and there's a man standing there with a gun and a cowboy hat. And he said, "I'm the sheriff. Is your dad home?" I said, "Yeah." And Dad came walking up. "What do you want, Leo?" And he said, "Do you still have them foxhounds?" Dad said, "Yeah." He said, "I got a highway patrolman been shot right down the road here from the house. He's okay, but the suspect's run off in the swamp, and we can't get him out of there. And I got an idea." And him and my dad talked, and I didn't hear what they were saying, but my dad looked at me and said, "I'm 12 now. Keep in mind, I'm 12.
Uh-huh.
But I'm on dirt roads, and it's our property. I'm not hitting the state road." He said, "Boy, take the truck down to the dog pen, load 12 dogs." I said, "Yes, sir." So I took the truck, drove down there, stuck 12 dogs in the dog box, came back up there. Dad standing there with his rifle, and sheriff standing there. And Dad got in the truck and said, "You better let me drive." And I slid over to the passenger side, and we went off behind the sheriff. We got down to where the suspect was in the swamp. Sheriff got out with his bullhorn and said, "I know you're in there. I just want to let you know what I'm getting ready to do. This is the sheriff. I've got a pack of trained attack dogs that we just brought in from Greenville." Greenville's the bigger city here, right?
That's right.
He said, "I'm going to give you to the count of 10 to surrender. And then I'm going to turn these dogs loose on you, and they're going to go in there and they're going to kill you, boy. They're going to kill you. 1, 2, 10. Herman, turn them dogs loose." Daddy popped tailgate on the truck, popped the dog box loose. They took about 10 steps and they struck a fox. And it was on. About 5 minutes later, the suspect was standing in the middle of the road with his hands over his head, surrendering.
Now that's a good story.
And it's a true story, too. And the deputies came and got him, cuffed him, took him to the jail. And my daddy and the sheriff and me sat on the back of the truck and listened to the dogs run for about 3 hours.
Wow.
And we eventually caught them up. They weren't going anywhere. I mean, the area where we turned them loose in had the river on one side and the creek on the other side. So they were going to come home, and they did. They came home. So, but there's been a lot of houses built since then.
Oh yeah.
Just like you were talking about. But yeah, that's a true story, and that's a good story. And I've got all kinds of stories like that. I've told them on the Tick Bite NC page.
Okay.
I've told them on the Army of Orange.
I'll go check that out. I really do. I want to read up on some of these stories. Well, listen, Todd, I'm not going to keep you any longer, man. We got holidays tomorrow. I'm going to have to help the wife on a few things here, getting ready for tomorrow ourselves. But again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out.
Thank you.
Share with me. And if you're ever down this way, if I'm down your way, I'll holler.
I appreciate it. Look, wish me luck with my endeavor into video. Because I've got the written part down pat, but the video I'm still working on that.
Okay. Well, I'd love to see it too. But I'd love for you to teach me some of that.
Have a good one, Sam.
All right. You take care. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh.
Bye.